Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm, pointing out empirically evident true things about language, connecting them to physics and mathematics, looking for our axiomatic definition of sensorality. So, what do we got? Last episode we proved that languages are not distinct, which is a massive, massive result. And of course you say, of course there are languages, Brad. We have Spanish and French and Russian and Mongolian. Does Mongolian have its own language? I don't know. Chinese or Bantu or whatever. But no, there's fundamental syllables. The thing that you cannot deconstruct anymore is the syllability. How the sound that composes the word that is represented by the letters. And so we've shown extensively how those sounds are iterated. You have a finite amount in your basis. Still trying to figure out what's going on there sometimes. And then you have an infinite range. Finite base, unlimited range. But languages are not distinct, the syllables are. And right, the examples of that is English, right? What is English? We said the fundamental syllable is ing. English. Right? It's a sound modified by consonants. Ish. English. Literally. So there's an L in there, but it's still just modifying the syllability with consonants. Ing, vibration, lish. And so it's not distinct. And how do we know that? Well, what's the difference between English in England and English in the United States? A couple letters, right? You have color versus color, favor versus favor, line versus Q, which actually Q makes more sense. I like Q better for forming a line as in person. But the point being, even amongst quote-unquote the English language, right, you're still reducing letters to be more efficient, right? You're removing that U in favor or in color. And so again, all physical systems are trying to reach maximum efficiency. That's a state of stasis, stability. And English is not a language. Languages are not distinct. Sounds are distinct. And a collection of sounds in order is a language. That's why you have all of these quote-unquote loan words in Russian or in Spanish or in French or in any other language. It's because why is English the most spoken language? Why is English the language of science? It's because it's consolidating. Language is consolidating to its most efficient form at the species level as a whole. So we have but just another little thing we see people keep messing with Jordan Peterson, keeps saying, what is this? What is that? As you see people, if you're just watching these videos and you see me think I'm jumping around or whatever, academia has had direct access to my work for going on literally a decade at this point, since 2016. And so you see Jordan Peterson trying to be an intellectual or something. What is this? What is that? And it's like he's not being insightful about it. And so it's just you learn from other people. And so you're going to learn the most efficient behaviors. And now you're seeing public intellectuals trying to use logic, and it's just so far out of your guys' league. It's actually funny. But inserality is nonsense. Reverting back to a negative definition, nonsense produces dissonance physically. When you're trying to make sense of something and it doesn't make any sense, it's because it physically is not consistent. And so dissonance is a physical thing that you feel in your head. And so when your head hurts or, that makes my brain spin, it's one, if you're genuinely learning something new, but there won't be resistance to that. If you're feeling resistance, that physical resistance is dissonance. And so not knowing something causes a physical reaction. Cursive handwriting exists because rhythm maximizes efficiency. Right? The entire existence of cursive is because you want to not have to lift your pen stroke up off the paper to get to the next letter. And so, but why, again, I would say tendency, again, over a lot of different languages, that cursive isn't really used, or certainly tending away from cursive. And that's because we have computers, we have font. And so you'll even see preservation of geometry within different fonts because, right, a computer is a physical system. So those spacings you have on your display, those resolution pixels, that's a physical space. And so you see the geometric limits of letters articulated when you type out a text message or an email. You see it on the screen. It's pretty cool. What is the relationship of tension and momentum? Right, if you're tense, you're winding up that whatever, you're generating the ability to move. Momentum, again, rhythm maximizes efficiency. It's proportional to momentum. You generate more momentum faster if you're in rhythmic motion. So tension, I would say, is inversely proportional to momentum. Certainly in a sociological, emotional sense, right? If you're very tense, you're not generating a lot of momentum. Tension kind of means like resistance, but in fundamental motion, you want to coil up that spring. You want to crouch down before you jump. So you're building tension in that sense. So just what is that relationship there? Censorship removes. Sensorality, removality. Remember, we're exploring what can we do. We just put ality at the end of a word. Why not ility, right? I-L-I-T-Y. And we do sometimes, and we do ality sometimes. And so, right, in the same way, you have to get a common denominator for dimensional analysis in chemistry class. You have to get the same prefix to cancel out the logic. In dimensionless analysis, again, if you introduce an equation sign, if you say this is that is dimensional analysis. If you say this sensorality regulates, it's not is. Is the fundamental equality, and any other verb is like higher order or emergent kind of functionality. The point being is if you use a verb that simply is not is, it is what it is. That is the fundamental definition form, or the fundamental connecting. You're saying one is one. So just any verb that's not is. But censorship removes, obviously. And so now connecting it to another very fundamental thing that everybody says, hide and seek. Sensorality hides. To censor something is to hide something. No explanation needed. Hiding, siding. Consider sanguine. I might even be saying that word wrong. Sanguine. Now generalize that, right? You remove the E, and then you say sanguinality or sanguinility. Right? What I just said with the ility versus the ality. And do those both have to pair up to cancel out the prefix? Because effectively now what we're doing is we're extending these word forms out. So we're going to form a sentence or just an order of these syllables. And the syllables, like I said, will condense down into a new logical meaning simply by removing or adding spaces. And you'll see the final reduced form of these words, speciality containing sensorality containing speciality, and then those, like, again, those extended word forms, those syllabilities forming something new. We're not there yet, obviously, but literally limited by time. But the sanguine, sanguinility, sanguinality, but what's the difference? And specifically, that's not a random example. Sanguine means positive. And so God looked out of the universe and said, and it was good. Right? So bad words don't really exist. You go this thing, and it was good, right? Life's good, the company. Right? What is life? Life is good. I'm telling you, when you're building a brand, you're condensing, you're doing all of these functions of language all at once. Right? So life's good, the brand. All right, what is life? Life's good. And so, but life is positive. And so you don't really have bad words, you have inefficient words like fuck or shit or ass. It's like you're being crude, you're being vulgar, but like what establishes that as bad? Is it like some sort of tone, like the frequency that you make it sound at, or like, again, what we still haven't answered, what is a bad word, or what makes something established as a bad word? But do bad words exist? Again, not really, no. But does that make any sense? Like, words aren't good or bad, they're just efficient or inefficient. They're descript or nondescript, they're specific or general. They're applicable or they're non-applicable. So I don't know. Utility versus usality, right? If you take the word use and generalize it, you get usality. Use, usality, utilize. Sensorality utilizes. An edge is an end. For whatever reason, the word edge always gets me. It's very clearly symmetric and demonstrating some of these fundamental properties. It starts with an E, ends with an E. It's 4 simple letters. The D and the G kind of have some sort of reflexive symmetry to them. And again, I just did a short on chirality. Again, if you look in the mirror and you hold up your left hand, it looks like your right hand. And so the real kind of core of what chirality is it's really just an emergent property or characteristic because of asymmetry. Again, nothing is the identity matrix. Everything's infinitely unique. There's no systems that are exactly one-to-one. So symmetry does not exist. Chirality, when they say, you can't, the mirror image, right? And so what is really doing, again, I hate to use the word light anymore, but radiation, momentum, but it flips, right? So why does it flip? Again, because it's that entropic or that open geometry, right? The triangle or the pentagon or the septagon, where there's that point where if you go directly through the vertice, that line segment is longer than the other side going straight to the other point, and so you have some sort of imbalance. You approach efficiency, but you can't get there. You want to approach perfection, but you can't get there. And so, proving the non-existence of symmetry, if you're actually in theoretical physics, it's humongous. But you just put a short on YouTube, it's like, oh yeah, chirality exists, therefore symmetry doesn't. And that's really the entire proof, right? Because we're proving everything by physical existence. There's a pool table right there. How are you going to prove me wrong? Well, I postulate this. But now my proof is there's words right there. What are you going to do? Use words to tell me the words don't exist? You're kind of shit out of luck on that one. But again, the word edge, it's an end. It literally is. What's the edge of the universe? Not a well-defined question. We can't answer it because we have measurement bounds. Like, we know what we can possibly garner or glean from our data or input is limited. So there's questions you can intuitively kind of try to ask, but you're not going to get an answer, and they don't really make sense. But amend is to change, right? Amend, and the word, again, religion now should be blatantly clear as a physical ontology. Amend, amen, ends. But it literally, again, bridges that logic. Amen, end. Right? It's literally bridging the en from amen to the en in the beginning of end. Sensorality is roarity, like sensorality roars, because again, we're breaking it down to connect it to these fundamental, very basic properties or physical processes. Sensorality roar, rush, all right, but sensor, roar. Is a mirror a sensor? Of course it is. It filters light. I don't like the word light. It filters frequency of vibration that is radiation. But why does chirality exist? Again, because of the asymmetry, the fundamental geometry. When form began, when mass stabilized, you get form, which then creates space. And it's fundamentally to learn about yourself, right? We'll just use the person analogy. It's not really an analogy, but it's also not fundamental because we have choice. But, right, why does chirality exist? Because if you want to learn something about yourself, you take a little kid, again, like we've said, the not bias. They'll tell you what they aren't. I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. So if you're an electron, how do you know that another particle you're interacting with is not an electron? Well, it's charged. Am I attracted or I'm repulsed? Is it positive or is it negative? So again, clear fundamental physical stability of two. But so geometrically, if you have a particle, the very formation of mass, and it's going to try to move. Right? So you have two things. Boom! You have that moment of zero entropy, and then it expands. You get a new property, and so it's going to try to I just have to use the curling analogy. You get a point, then another point, and it separates, and then it tries to create a boundary, I guess. But it is the boundary. So this is I'm trying to get to this intuition, but there's no words to describe it. And so it's really just look at a triangle, look at a pentagon, and that asymmetry. It kind of had the physically, if you turn out the lights in a room and I gotta stop saying that word. And you start touching the walls. The universe had to feel out space, and the only way to do that is with asymmetry. Or else again you would get the 2, 4. It would be it wouldn't be prime. It wouldn't be entropic. It wouldn't be open. It wouldn't be able to be built upon. But that's the best I can give you. But the biggest thing to me is, what is a flip? Because right, we have rotation, where you're going around a center point, orbit, where one body's going around another body, and then flip. Why are those the only two things you can do? A flip or rotation? Are there any type of other? You have translation, where you just take there, you go over to here. You have a flip where you go over an axis. It doesn't really matter which one. You would call it a flip. But flipping inverts. And so when you have a mirror image, the operative word is you have inversion. So chirality is indicative, or the asymmetry causes inversion upon reflection, and that is called chirality. So, beat you, Walter White from Breaking Bad. Chirality is literally the opening scene. But again, the operative word being flip. Still, when they say the word chirality, I know what it means physically, profoundly, intuitively, and then use words to explain it. It's a feeling like something in there is where our axiom's going to pop out. Nobody knows. But again, are there any other non-translational, and they call that translation in physics, translational changes? You have a flip, you have a rotation, you have translation. There's three. Is that three again? Like, what is again? You have to have a minimum of two at pretty much everything. And then you have, like, again, 3 is the open dynamic, and then 5 and 7 have some relevance, but I don't know, just thinking out loud, working through this every day. Like I said, at the end of these proofs, you feel like you know nothing, because you're literally like forming the words to describe the things, and you can't Google this stuff. You have to derive and prove every step. And I just want my money to be left alone. Holy shit. Aura is a vibe. Right? And these slang things, we talked about Riz, we talked about, and now we're going to talk about aura, right? Sensorization, Riz, right? Now say aura. Now generalize it with ality, orality, sensorality. And so aura is, again, another word that's emerged in the past, 24 months? And it's a fundamental syllable of sensorality, orality, aura. And so it's just crazy. But it's not, because language is consistent. And it's like, again, a bunch of people shitting in their hands, smearing it all over their face, and wondering why it smells. And you're like, you just shit in your hand and smeared it all over your face, Johnny. And then they're like, oh, wow, yeah, that checks out. Yeah, words have consistency. Why is that surprising to anybody? That's why you can understand what I'm saying. Proof by a fundamental empirical evidence. Gosh, but that's funny, right? So you can have sensorization if you have Riz. You can have sensorality if you have aura. How about mewing? You ever seen that shit? They go like this, like jawline, trying to extend your jawline. But mew, like you could write down so, like S-E-W, so, sign. And so you can directly connect that. I don't know, just random slang's funny. What is the relationship of virality and momentum? If you have a lot of momentum, are you going viral? Yes. So they're proportional. The stability of 2, right? So now another, again, pointing out these things little kids do or big kids do, because age is just a number. But you get one thing and it's good. You get another thing and it's better. You get the maximum thing you can get, it's the best. What's after best? The bestesis? Once, twice. Thrice is not a word, right? So you have this, again, this fundamental stability of 2 in like our progression of increasing. We have addition and exponentiation, and you can kind of write that in logarithm form if you want, but there's really 2 increasing operators, and so those are positive, but it's like limited by 2. You have something that's good, right? Again, remember, good, you have to describe something, you have to have a physical object to describe, so you have good, you have an object, and you have 3 iterations of the shadow, so you have the base and then 2 shadows. In our language systems, you have 1, 2, and then many representing the open dynamic of 3. The 1 and the 2 are the fundamental stabilizing dynamics. That's why the Riemann hypothesis, all zeros root to 0 through the real part 1/2. Trivial, have fun with that proof, who cares? But what is going on? Like what is the limit there? Is it base and then 1, 2, or is it reducing to 2 to 1? Or is it reciprocal where it's indistinguishable? Right? Does the stability of 2 say you have to root to 0 to 1, or does it just mean there's 2 things that you can't root past? Now I'm going to go with that. But are there emergent sounds or just all base sounds, such as primary and secondary colors? So trying to ask a new question here is like, are all sounds the equal level? Like you have emergent colors, primary colors, and you get secondary colors. Are there primary sounds and secondary sounds? Or is it just all of them are on the same level of fundamentality, same basic level? Don't know, trying to pose a meaningful question. Virality is proportional to momentum, and then the stability of 2. Again, just trying to build a syllability limit. What can we do, say, about syllables? And finishing up for today, I think that might be it for today. Yes, that is it for today. Hopefully I didn't go too long. This might be chopped up into 2 episodes. But again, just trying to... Each day is like what I call a theorem overload, if you see my first derivation of an axiom, which is insane to say that I'm still not being paid money. I do not care about public acknowledgement whatsoever. But just give me some fucking money, please. It's my money. But when you're at the end of these proofs, it feels like you know nothing. And I'm literally like, how many proofs I do in a day at the end of one of these things? I mean, I'm always doing a ton of research, but it's just like sets of proofs just fall off. You build up a huge building, there's a bunch of scaffolding around it, and then you pull down the scaffolding, there's just one big beautiful piece left. And we're ripping down the scaffolding as fast as possible. But at this point, like I said, I've been demanding my money publicly for a long time. I've offered every penny I've ever had. I've been treated with nothing besides profound disrespect. All of it illegal. And nobody gives a shit. So don't forget, we're proving that human beings have absolutely categorically failed at having morals or values or being decent to any extent whatsoever. I am 0% political, 0% religious. I'm just a dude that wants to have a family and a career. And I was born with a gift. Yeah, you guys can have my gifts. Shit sucks. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.